What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Dad Does Videos. I'm standing here in my garage, right in front of the door that leads right into our house. And as you can see, we have no handrail on either side of our couple steps down here. Now, that is not a code violation. You do not need to have a handrail when you just have 2 or 3 steps leading from your garage into a door that leads into your house. But it certainly is safer to have one. Now, if you have some carpentry skills, you can get that done. If you don't, you have to call a carpenter, get that carpenter in, you're paying for it. But there is a solution that is available right now that is easier than building something or having someone build something for you. And it is the Steady Rail from a company called the Carolina Stair Company. And here it is. It comes in this really, really nice black finish. All the materials that you need to install it are included within the package right here. You could install it on either side of your door. So if you like your handrail on the left, pop it on the left. If you like it on the right, for your situation, pop it in on the right. It's supposed to install in under 20 minutes. We will absolutely give that a test. And then what I think is probably the most important feature is that the angle at which you install it is adjustable. And we will show you how that works once we get to that point in the video. All right, here is a good look at all the different pieces that are included within the package that we just showed you. So let's talk about each of these individually. Of course, the main player here is the actual railing. And if you're curious, when you're installing this, and we'll go over this in a couple minutes, the longer side is going to be the top side of the railing, and the shorter side, of course, is going to be the bottom side. Now, my Steady Rail came with these flat brackets already installed. Now, you are going to use those if you are installing your Steady Rail on a flat surface with a stud behind it. Most people, I would guess, are probably going to install their Steady Rail on a door jamb. And conveniently, the Carolina Stair Company includes the door jamb brackets, or the L brackets as they are commonly called, which you can use on the end of your Steady Rail. You simply will just remove the flat brackets using an Allen wrench to remove those screws and pop these on. We will go through that process in a few minutes. A couple other things we've got here. We've got replacement parts just in case. These pieces right here, these are the pieces that attach the brackets to your actual railing, and you'll notice this one is slightly bigger than that one. And if you do have to replace these pieces, just know that the slightly bigger one goes on the top of the railing and the slightly smaller one goes on the bottom part of the railing. The Carolina Stair Company also includes these replacement screws that are exactly the same as the screws that are holding these flat brackets on to the railing right now. Just another convenience that they provide to you just in case you need them. And then lastly, we have a bag of screws. We've got some really long ones here, and we've got some really tiny ones down here. Now, the really long ones are going to be the ones that you use to actually install your Steady Rail onto that flat surface or onto the door jamb using the brackets right here. And then those little screws right at the bottom of the bag here are going to be used right at the bottom of the railing right here. There's a screw hole right here and then another one right there. And I will show you how to do this, but when you screw those screws in, it basically locks the railing in place so it won't slide. Like I mentioned earlier, one of the beauties of this railing is that you can adjust the angle of it. So by installing those little screws, it locks that angle in place. First thing you want to do is figure out on which side of the door you want to install your Steady Rail. And I think this is more of a preference type of thing, but there are some logistical concerns that you should probably think of before you actually make your mind up on which side of the door you want to install yours on. So for instance, for me, I'm in the space where the garage door closes right now. So it really wouldn't make sense for me to install my steady rail on the right side of my doorway, because this is a really popular walkway right here. It seems awkward to just come up over here and then walk around the steady railing if it were installed right here. So we're gonna put ours on the left side of our doorway, mostly because of that first reason that I talked about, but also it makes more logistical sense. You can see the wall kind of pops out right here, and we've got a shoe rack right here, so there aren't going to be as many people kind of walking in this space where the railing would pop out a little bit. So just something to keep in mind. Just think about the patterns in your garage, where people walk, any kind of logistical concerns like that before you start to install your steady rail. All right, next thing we're going to do is figure out how we are going to install our steady rail. And this is maybe a combination of the first step that I just talked about, because not only do you have to consider the logistics and kind of the walking paths in your garage, you also have to consider where it's most applicable to install the steady rail. So for us, on the left side of our doorway, we have two options, right? We have this little narrow space that I have the steady rail kind of leaned up against right now. But as you can see, the railing's too close to the wall right here. So if you're coming out, you really can't get a good grip on this. It's hard to even get your hand around this right here. So we're not gonna put it actually attached to the wall. But if you are going to do that, please make sure that behind the wall, behind the brackets, is a stud. If you have to go get yourself a stud finder and make sure that there's a stud behind the wall where you're mounting this steady rail on a flat surface, make sure you do that, because if you don't mount this into a stud, this will fail. So we're not going to mount this flatly against the wall like this. We are going to use those L brackets or those door jamb brackets. All right, so since we are installing our steady rail without these flat brackets, but instead using those L brackets, we have to remove these brackets from the steady rail. All you need to do is get yourself a 3mm Allen wrench and just remove each of the screws on both brackets. If you're not familiar with an Allen wrench, you just simply put in one end and twist counterclockwise, and those screws will begin to pop out. Okay, so we have our flat brackets off of each end of our steady rail. We are going to use those same screws that we just removed to then attach the L brackets to the ends of our steady rails. The screws simply go in right there, those four, right in the middle of the side of the L bracket, and those are going to attach to the end of your railing like so. Now, if you are like me and you are using these to attach your railing to the left side of your doorway, this is how you're going to attach your L brackets. If, however, you are installing on the right side of your door, all you have to do is flip these around and you will be able to install these correctly on the right side of your doorway. Time to break out the tape measure, because we need to figure out where we are going to install our steady rail in terms of the height. Now, typically garage handrails and handrails inside your house are installed between 34 and 38 inches. We are going to shoot for 34 inches because that's what the package says to do, so I'm just following the directions. Couple caveats here when you are measuring. You always want to measure from the front of your step, not the back of it. And then secondly, we want to measure from that last step before you go into the house. So not the landing right here or that floor level when you go into the house. It's actually your last step, the front of it, before you go into the house. So we're just going to use our tape measure. We're going to look for 34 inches and we're going to make a mark on the wall. This is a little bit of a challenging demonstration to do by myself, but I'm going to give it a shot. We've got our 34-inch marking right here. What you want to do is align the top railing of your steady rail to cut right through that. at an angle that is appealing to you. Make some pencil marks on your bottom bracket where the holes are all around, and then we will drill pilot holes. All right, so as you can see here, we've got 2 pilot holes already drilled with our big honkin' drill bit here, and I thought this was a good point to stop and give a little tip, maybe some advice. This is 12 inches long, our drill bit. We don't need to drill a pilot hole that's 12 inches deep. But I bought this a while back because as a homeowner, you never know what the heck you're gonna encounter half the time. So there's a lot of length here for a lot of different projects. But for this specific project, since the screws that we're going to be drilling into these pilot holes are 4 inches long, you need a drill bit that's at least 4 inches to account for the space that those screws are going to go into. So yes, this is 12 inches long, but I used a piece of painter's tape right here to mark off 4 inches. That way I know how far into the wall I need to go with the drill bit when I'm drilling the pilot holes. Okay, so we've got our 4 pilot holes all ready to go. We're going to grab our steady rail and attach the bottom L bracket to those pilot holes with those big 4-inch screws. All right, so as you can see, we've got our bottom L bracket installed, but I wanted to take a couple minutes here to give you some advice because this is a point where a lot of people struggle. Even though we drilled our pilot holes, it is challenging often to drive 4-inch screws into those pilot holes. So first off, make sure you are using a number 2 driver bit on your drill. The number 1s aren't going to fit that screw head as tightly, so they are going to strip the screw. If you haven't bought new driver bits in a long time, go to the store, buy some. Those things wear down over time, and because of that, they are not going to fit the screw head as well as they did when they were new. So the new ones will fit perfectly. They'll leave hardly any space, which lessens the chance that the screw will strip. When you're using your drill, make sure you set the gear to the lowest possible. That's usually gear 1, but make sure you set the torque to the drill emblem. And that looks like this. So there is my gear and there is the drill emblem. And if you're not familiar, you can just twist this right here to set the torque. And when you are using your drill, you have to apply pressure when you are driving these screws in. If you don't apply enough pressure, the screws will start to strip a little bit. And lastly, there are a couple household products that can make driving those screws in a bit easier. Just simply roll the screws in some candle wax or a bar of soap. All right, so now that we have that bottom bracket installed, all we have to do is adjust the railing so that the top rail crosses that 34-inch mark that we have here on the wall. Once we're happy with that, we put our pencil marks where the holes are on the top bracket, drill our pilot holes, and then install that top bracket with the 4-inch screws. Now, like I said at the outset of this video, one of the best things about the steady rail is that you can adjust the angle of the railing. And that's why I installed the bottom bracket first, because you can move this thing all around to whatever angle that you want before locking everything in. Okay, so just a little quick tip. As I was installing my top bracket, I felt like I needed a little bit more space for my drill to drive those screws into the top bracket without getting in the way of the railing itself. So I just used a 6mm Allen wrench and just popped off the top of the steady rail from the other side that you can't see, but it's the same as right here. If you wanted to disconnect the bottom railing, you just slide your Allen wrench into the hole right there and twist counterclockwise. And then of course, when you've got everything set up, you put your Allen wrench back in and tighten everything back up. All right, so as you can see, we've got everything in place. The one thing that we have left to do is to lock our steady rail in place. And what I mean by that is lock the angle in place. Again, the beauty of this thing is that even when it's installed, you can move the angle around to your liking. But you don't want that to be the case when you're actually using it, right? Because you'll grab onto it and be like, whoa, where am I going? So we need to lock our angle in place. Let me show you how to do that. Okay, first thing we want to do is make sure we are happy with the angle of the steady rail. And for us, being happy means the top railing of our steady rail runs right through that 34-inch mark on the wall that we talked about earlier. And if I step back and go right across from my steady rail, you can see that marking disappears. So we are happy with the angle that we have for our steady rail. Of course, you can adjust yours to however you'd like, but if you're following the directions, it should be at an angle similar to this, around 34, 35, maybe even 36 inches if you decided to do that. Okay, so here is a view of underneath our steady rail, and as you can see, we got those two holes right here and right here. We talked about these a little bit earlier in the video. We're just gonna grab the two little screws that came in our package for the steady rail and drive those right into these holes that will lock the angle of the steady rail in place. And as you saw with that, no need to use a drill bit or anything. You just drive those screws straight in. Now, look at that. This thing is locked in place. We are finished. All right, so let's give this the real test, actually using it to walk in the door. And back down. It feels really steady. I have no complaints at all. It feels like it could withstand a ton of weight. All right, just a couple parting comments before we go. Of course, I installed my steady rail using the L brackets or the door jamb brackets. If you are going to use the flat brackets, you are going to install your steady rail the exact same way. I mean, the process by which you install it is going to be the exact same. Of course, you're going to install that on a flat surface, and behind it, you are going to make sure that there is a stud so your steady rail does not fail. But the drilling of the pilot holes, the driving the screws in, the measuring, it's all the same. It's just a different way to mount the steady rail. And secondly, I wanted to test whether we could install this in 20 minutes. Remember at the outset of the video, the package talked about how this could be installed in 20 minutes. Now, I do think that it could be installed in 20 minutes. Now, I didn't do that. I'm sitting here talking through it, I'm recording, those kinds of things. So it certainly took me a lot longer than 20 minutes. But I think if you got this out of the package, knew what you were doing, you could absolutely install this in 20 minutes. I do think that for some folks who are just not as experienced in working with some of the tools and the way that you are using the drill bits and the screws, it's probably going to take a little bit longer. So just have that knowledge and that expectation when you start. Thanks for watching, everybody.